Dr. Lisa Martinez stared at her reflection in the medical bay window of the Star Voyager. The gentle hum of the ship's engines reminded her that they were only 6 hours away from the Zarkanian medical station. Her dark hair was neatly tied back, and her blue medical uniform was perfectly pressed, but she couldn't shake off the feeling of nervousness in her stomach. She picked up her tablet and reviewed the human medical data for the 100th time. The files contained everything about human biology, from basic cell structure to complex immune responses. As Earth's leading expert in xenobiology, she knew this information by heart. But today was different. Today, she would present this data to alien doctors who had studied thousands of species across the galaxy. "More coffee?" a friendly voice asked from behind. Lisa turned to see Dr. Kevin Phillips entering the medical bay with 2 steaming cups. His presence always brought a sense of calm to any situation. "Thanks, Kevin. I think I've memorized every single detail about human biology, but I still feel unprepared." Kevin handed her a cup and leaned against the examination table. "You know what's funny? We're nervous about presenting our own biology. It's not like we're trying to explain someone else's body systems." Lisa smiled and took a sip of the coffee. "That's exactly what makes it scary. We're not just presenting data, we're representing our entire species. The Zarkanians have been studying alien life forms for centuries. What if they find us disappointing?" The ship's intercom crackled to life. "Medical Bay, this is Bridge. We've received the first transmission from the Zarkanian station. They're requesting our preliminary medical data before docking." "Acknowledged, Bridge," Lisa responded. She placed her coffee down and walked to the main console. With a deep breath, she pressed the transmit button, sending the first batch of human biological data to the alien medical station. Kevin watched the transmission progress bar move across the screen. "No turning back now. You know what I find interesting? We're probably the only species that gets nervous about what others think of us." The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Lisa and Kevin organized their presentation materials, checked their universal translators, and made sure their medical scanners were calibrated for the station's atmospheric conditions. The rest of the medical team, 5 other doctors and researchers, joined them for final briefings. As the Star Voyager approached the medical station, Lisa got her first view of the alien facility through the medical bay window. The station was massive, shaped like a giant double helix floating in space. Its silvery surface reflected the light from the nearby star, making it look like a piece of glittering jewelry against the black canvas of space. "It's beautiful," she whispered. The docking procedure went smoothly. As the team prepared to disembark, Lisa gathered them for one final word. "Remember, we're not just doctors and researchers today. We're the first human medical team to participate in a galactic medical exchange. Whatever happens in there, let's show them what humanity is made of, literally and figuratively." The airlock door opened with a soft hiss. A tall, slender alien with iridescent scales and 4 arms stepped forward to greet them. "Welcome to the Zarkanian Medical Federation Station. I am Assistant Medical Officer Vertil. Chief Medical Officer Xalthek is waiting in the main conference room." As they followed Vertil through the station's curved corridors, Lisa noticed how different everything was from human medical facilities. The walls seemed to pulse with a soft, organic light, and the air had a strange, sweet smell that her sensors identified as a natural sterilizing agent. They passed several observation rooms where alien doctors were treating patients of various species. Lisa caught glimpses of creatures that defied her imagination, some gaseous, some crystalline, some that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Finally, they reached the main conference room. Before entering, Lisa straightened her uniform one last time. She had trained for years for this moment, earned multiple degrees in xenobiology, and studied countless alien species. Now it was time to help aliens understand humanity. The doors slid open silently, revealing a circular room filled with Zarkanian medical officials. At the center stood Chief Medical Officer Xalthek, All six of their eyes focused intently on the human delegation. The first contact medical protocol was about to begin. Chief Medical Officer Xalthek made a sound that the universal translator interpreted as a mix between a sigh and a laugh. The tall Zarkanian doctor's six eyes blinked in an alternating pattern as they reviewed the human biological data on their floating holographic display. The presentation room had grown uncomfortably quiet. "Is this some kind of joke?" Xalthek finally asked, their scaled skin shifting from blue to a deep purple, a sign of amusement in their species. "You're telling me your species has only one heart, and your bones are filled with marrow?" Lisa Martinez kept her face neutral, though she felt her cheeks growing warm. "Yes, that's correct. Our bone marrow produces blood cells and you repair damage through this process called inflammation." Xalthek interrupted, their upper arms gesturing at the data while their lower arms typed notes. "Your bodies deliberately cause swelling and pain as a healing mechanism. How incredibly primitive." The other Zarkanian doctors in the room started making clicking sounds, their version of whispering. Lissa could feel Kevin Phillips tensing beside her, but she placed a subtle hand on his arm to keep him quiet. "If you look at the efficiency rates of our healing process," Lisa continued calmly, "you'll see that. Efficiency." Xalthek's scales rippled with color. "Your species takes days, sometimes weeks to heal from simple injuries. The average Zarkanian can regenerate an entire limb in that time." They turned to address their colleagues. "And look at this. They call this an immune system. Their bodies create fever to fight infections. They actually raise their internal temperature on purpose." The clicking sounds grew louder. One younger Zarkanian in the back actually had to leave the room, their scales flashing bright yellow with what the human's cultural guide identified as uncontrolled amusement. Lisa took a deep breath. "Our immune system is actually quite sophisticated. The fever response is just one of many defense mechanisms that—" "And this is the most amusing part," Xalthek continued as if Lisa hadn't spoken. "They need to shut down their consciousness for approximately 1/3 of every planetary rotation. They call it sleep. Their bodies simply stop functioning properly without it." The room erupted in more clicking sounds. Lissa noticed that even Assistant Medical Officer Virtil, who had been professional and courteous during their tour, was now displaying patches of yellow on their scales. "Sleep serves many vital functions." Kevin stepped in, his voice firm but professional, "including memory consolidation and cellular repair." Xalthek waved their upper arms dismissively. "Yes, yes, very quaint. But let's move on to something truly baffling." They pulled up a new hologram showing human muscle structure. "Your species relies on these stringy fibers for movement, and you power them with oxygen. Our muscular system is actually quite efficient," Lisa said. "Humans can perform sustained physical activity for efficient." Xalthek's scales now showed swirls of purple and yellow. "Your muscles tear from use and require days to repair. Our crystalline motor systems never tear and can exert force up to 20 times greater than your strongest specimen." The chief medical officer turned to address the full room. "Colleagues, we are witnessing something extraordinary today. Here we have a species that somehow achieved space travel despite having single-pump circulation, inflammatory healing, oxygen-dependent muscles, and a required unconscious period. Their biology is so inefficient that they need to constantly consume organic matter for energy instead of simply absorbing stellar radiation like civilized species." Lisa felt her hands trembling slightly, but she kept them clasped behind her back. She had expected some surprise at human biology, but not this level of mockery. Next to her, Kevin was practically vibrating with contained anger. However, Xalthek continued, their scales settling into a more professional blue shade. "As scientists, we must study even the most primitive systems. Perhaps understanding how humans survive with such basic biology will help us better understand early evolution in other species." The chief medical officer turned all six eyes back to Lisa. We will proceed with the comparative tests as planned. Though I must admit, I don't expect any surprising results. You may prepare your test subjects for tomorrow's trials." Lisa nodded stiffly. "We'll be ready." As they left the presentation room, she could still hear the clicking laughter of the Zarkanian doctors. Kevin waited until they were in the corridor before speaking. "They have no idea what they're about to learn about human endurance," he whispered. "Tomorrow is going to be very interesting." Kevin Phillips couldn't sleep. The soft hum of the medical station's life support systems usually had a calming effect, but not tonight. He sat in the human delegation's temporary quarters, staring at his data pad while the rest of the team slept. The screen showed detailed comparisons between human and Zarkanian biology. "You're still up." Lisa Martinez walked in quietly, carrying 2 cups of synthetic coffee from their supplies. "Couldn't sleep knowing those smug aliens think we're primitive." He accepted the coffee gratefully. "But I think I have an idea." Lisa sat down across from him. "I'm listening." "We're approaching this all wrong," Kevin said, his eyes bright with excitement. "They're judging us based on their standards: crystalline muscles, radiation absorption, rapid healing. But what if we challenge them to tests that show our strengths?" He pulled up a new document and started typing. "I propose 3 challenges. First, an endurance test. Not just running or lifting, but sustained physical activity over hours. Second, a healing observation trial focused on long-term recovery, not just quick fixes. And third, an environmental adaptation test." Lisa leaned forward, reading his notes. "They'll never agree to it. Zoltek already thinks we're not worth studying." "That's exactly why they'll agree," Kevin smiled. "Their pride won't let them refuse. They think they'll win easily." The next morning, they presented their proposal to the Zarkanian Medical Board. Zoltek's scales flickered between blue and purple as they read the test parameters. "You want to run these comparative trials?" The alien doctor's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "Very well. It will be educational for you to see true biological superiority in action." The first test was set up in the station's large environmental chamber. Amy Richardson, their human test subject, stood ready in her exercise gear. Beside her, a Zarkanian volunteer named Zeltak towered nearly 2 feet taller, their crystalline muscles gleaming under the lights. "The rules are simple," Kevin announced. "Both participants will perform a series of physical tasks without stopping. Last one standing wins." Zoltek made a clicking sound of amusement. "Our crystalline muscle structure never tires. This will be over quickly." The test began. Both participants started with basic exercises: running, climbing, lifting. The Zarkanian moved with incredible speed and power, their crystalline muscles allowing them to lift weights that would crush a human. Amy kept a steady, measured pace. 1 hour passed. Then 2. The Zarkanians' movements began to slow. "Impossible," Zoltek muttered, checking their instruments. "Our volunteers' energy reserves are dropping faster than predicted." 3 hours in, Zeltak's crystalline muscles began to lose their shine. Their movements became jerky and uncoordinated. Meanwhile, Amy kept going, her breathing steady, her pace unchanged. "How?" Virtil asked, their scales showing patches of green, a sign of confusion. "Her muscle efficiency should be far lower than ours." Lisa stepped forward. "You're right that our muscles are less powerful, but human bodies evolved for persistence hunting. We can maintain activity for hours, even days if necessary. Our sweating mechanism allows us to regulate temperature efficiently, and our endurance." She was interrupted by a loud thud. Zeltak had collapsed, their crystalline muscles now cloudy and dull. Amy stopped running and walked over to help them up. "This proves nothing," Zoltek said quickly, though their scales had shifted to an uncertain shade of green. "This was just one type of test. The healing trials will surely demonstrate our superiority." Kevin exchanged a knowing look with Lisa. "We look forward to those trials. But first, would you like to see our data on human recovery rates during extended physical activity? It might help explain what you just witnessed. The room had grown very quiet. The clicking sounds from yesterday were gone, replaced by thoughtful silence. Even Salthek seemed less certain as they stared at the human woman who had outlasted their strongest volunteer. For the first time since their arrival, the Zarkanians began to wonder if perhaps they had underestimated these strange, persistent creatures called humans. The medical station's testing chamber hummed with activity as both human and Zarkanian scientists gathered for the second round of trials. After yesterday's surprising endurance test results, the alien doctors had doubled their scanning equipment and added extra monitoring devices. Today's test will focus on healing and recovery, Salthek announced, their scales now a careful shade of professional blue. We will observe how both species handle various types of minor tissue damage and stress. Lisa watched as they brought out their testing equipment. The Zarkanians had insisted on running these trials their way, using their own methods. She noticed they seemed especially interested in human cell repair mechanisms. First test, response to moderate tissue stress, a Zarkanian technician called out. Amy Richardson sat calmly in the testing chair while sensors were attached to her arm. Across the room, another Zarkanian volunteer prepared for the same test. Both would have their tissue subjected to controlled stress to observe healing responses. The test began. At first, everything went as the Zarkanians expected. Their volunteers' crystalline tissue began immediate repairs, showing the rapid healing they were famous for. But after an hour, something strange happened. "This can't be right," one of the alien doctors said, tapping their monitoring screen. "The human's inflammation response, it's not random at all." Kevin stepped closer to look at their readings. Of course, it's not random. Human inflammation is a complex, coordinated response that. "But look at these patterns," Vertil interrupted, their scales showing swirls of green curiosity. "The immune response is targeting specific areas in sequence, like a programmed repair routine. And these repair cells, they're adapting their approach based on the type of damage." Lisa couldn't help but smile as she watched the alien doctors crowd around their screens. They had been so focused on the speed of healing that they had completely missed the sophistication of the human repair process. "Next test," Galactic called out quickly, their scales showing hints of uncertainty. "Environmental adaptation response." This time, both test subjects were exposed to varying temperatures and conditions. The Zarkanian volunteer handled the extreme cold well, their crystalline structure easily adapting. But when the temperature rose, something unexpected happened again. "Their core temperature isn't rising," a junior doctor noted, checking Amy's readings. "How is she maintaining homeostasis in this heat?" "Sweat," Lisa explained. "Our bodies use evaporative cooling tow." "But the efficiency ratings," another doctor interrupted. "These cooling rates shouldn't be possible with such a simple mechanism." The tests continued throughout the day. With each new trial, the Zarkanian doctors found more surprises. Human joint flexibility exceeded their predictions. Oxygen processing efficiency was higher than their models suggested possible. Even their supposedly primitive sleep cycle showed unexpected benefits. "Look at these cellular repair rates during rest periods," Vertil pointed out. "Their bodies use this sleep state to perform complex maintenance routines. It's not primitive at all. It's highly specialized." By the end of the day, the testing chamber had become crowded with curious alien doctors. Even species from other medical departments had come to observe. The clicking sounds were different now, not mocking, but excited and curious. Zolthek stood in the center of the room, all 6 eyes fixed on the test results floating before them. Their scales had shifted to a color Lisa hadn't seen before, a deep shade of what her cultural guide identified as professional respect. "We may need to revise some of our initial assumptions," the chief medical officer admitted slowly. "Your biology is not what we expected." "Would you like to see the rest of our data?" Kevin offered. "We have years of research on human adaptation and recovery that might interest you." The room filled with affirmative clicking sounds. Even Salthek nodded, their scales now showing genuine scientific curiosity. As Lisa watched the alien doctors pore over human medical data with new eyes, she realized they had achieved something important. They hadn't just proven humans were strong. They had shown that different evolutionary paths could lead to equally valid and sophisticated solutions. But the biggest surprise was still to come in tomorrow's final test. The final test was about to begin in the station's largest environmental chamber. Word had spread through the medical station about the strange human biology, and the observation deck was packed with aliens from various species. They all wanted to see the longest endurance trial ever conducted at the facility. "This is a mistake," Vertil said quietly to Zalthek. "After yesterday's results, we should reconsider this challenge." But Zalthek's scales had shifted to a determined purple. "We need to understand the full extent of their capabilities. Begin the trial." The chamber had been transformed into a running track that curved around its edges. Environmental controls would simulate various conditions while the participants ran. Amy Richardson stood at the starting line, doing simple stretches. Beside her, the Zarkanian athlete Kexley looked impressive with their crystalline muscles gleaming. "The rules are simple," Kevin announced. "Run until you can't run anymore. The environmental conditions will change every hour. There are no breaks, no stops." Lisa watched from the monitoring station as both runners began at a steady pace. The Zarkanian took an early lead, their crystalline legs carrying them forward with powerful strides. Amy kept to her own rhythm, her breathing steady and controlled. The first hour passed in normal conditions. Then the chamber's temperature began to rise. 40 degrees Celsius, a technician announced. The observers watched as sweat began to glisten on Amy's skin. "Their cooling system is activating," Vertil noted, watching the biological readings. "Heart rate stable, core temperature maintaining." The Zarkanian runner was still ahead, but their pace had slowed slightly. Their crystalline muscles didn't work quite as efficiently in high temperatures. 2 more hours passed. The temperature dropped rapidly to near freezing. Amy's breath came out in visible puffs, but she kept running. Kexley was still in the lead, but the gap had shortened. "Look at these readings," one of the alien doctors called out. "The human's body is burning fat reserves for energy. They're actually becoming more efficient as time passes." 5 hours in, Kexley began showing signs of strain. Their crystalline muscles, so powerful at the start, had lost their shine. Amy had found her second wind and was steadily closing the distance between them. "This shouldn't be possible," Zalthek muttered, their scales showing patches of confused green. Their primitive muscle structure should have failed hours ago. 6 hours. Kexley stumbled. Their crystalline legs were starting to cloud over, energy reserves depleting rapidly. Amy passed them, still maintaining the same steady pace she'd started with. 7 hours. Kexley collapsed. Medical teams rushed to help them up, but they couldn't continue. Their advanced crystalline muscles had finally reached their limit, but Amy kept running. "Stop the test," Vertil suggested. "We've seen enough." "No," Zalthek replied, all 6 eyes fixed on the human runner. "Let her continue. I want to see how far she can go." 8 hours passed, then 9. Amy was still running. Her pace had slowed, but her determination never wavered. The observation deck was completely silent now, every alien witness transfixed by this display of endurance. Finally, after 10 hours and 12 minutes, Amy raised her hand and slowed to a walk. She wasn't exhausted or collapsed like the Zarkanian runner. She had simply decided she was done. The silence broke as the observation deck erupted in a chaos of clicks, whistles, and other alien sounds of amazement. The monitoring equipment had recorded everything. The steady heart rate, the efficient cooling system, the remarkable energy management. Zalthek approached Amy, their scales now showing a color that the cultural guide couldn't even translate. "In all my years of medical research," they said, "I have never seen anything like this." Lisa and Kevin shared a proud smile. Their point had been made. not with complex explanations or defensive arguments, but with a simple demonstration of what humans did best: endure. The day after the marathon test, the Zarkanian medical station was buzzing with activity. Doctors and researchers from all departments crowded into the main laboratory, where Xalthek had been analyzing the test data all night. Their scales showed the deep blue of intense concentration as they studied the results. "Look at these patterns," Xalthek said, pointing to the floating holographic displays. "Everything we thought was primitive about human biology actually serves a complex purpose." Lisa and Kevin stood nearby, watching as the alien doctors made one discovery after another. The laboratory tables were covered with test results, biological scans, and tissue samples freely donated by Amy after her historic run. Their muscle fibers don't just tear randomly, one researcher noted, examining a sample under a molecular scanner. The microdamage creates a pattern that triggers specific growth responses. They actually become stronger through stress and repair. Vertil moved between different scanning stations, their scales showing excited patterns of green and blue. And their sweating mechanism. We thought it was messy and inefficient. But look at these thermal regulation graphs. No other species we've studied can maintain such precise temperature control during extended physical activity. Even their need for sleep makes sense now, another doctor added. Their bodies use this time to perform complex repair and maintenance routines. The neural patterns during sleep show incredible organizational activity. Xalthek pulled up a new set of data on the main screen. "But this is what truly amazes me," they said, pointing to a chart of human cellular activity. "Their bodies are constantly adapting, constantly improving. Every stress, every challenge, every recovery period makes them more efficient." Lisa stepped forward to explain. "We call it conditioning. Our bodies adapt to regular physical stress by becoming stronger and more efficient over time, like living ships that repair and upgrade themselves," Vertil said in wonder. "But you do it without any technological assistance. It's all biological." The research team had set up a special display showing Amy's performance data from the marathon. The graphs showed how her body had maintained homeostasis hour after hour, efficiently burning through energy reserves and repairing damage in real time. "We've been looking at biology all wrong," Xalthek admitted, their scales shifting to a humble shade of green. "We thought advanced meant having specialized systems like our crystalline muscles. But your biology is advanced in a different way. It's incredibly adaptable." Kevin nodded. "Humans evolved as persistence predators on Earth. We couldn't be the strongest or the fastest, so we became the most enduring." A young Zarkanian researcher rushed into the lab, carrying new data. "Chief Medical Officer, I've been studying their historical medical records. Humans have survived and recovered from injuries that would kill most species. They've adapted to live in environments from frozen tundra to burning deserts. Some have even survived falling from great heights or being frozen for short periods." The room filled with excited clicking sounds as the aliens discussed these findings. Lisa noticed that none of them were laughing now. Instead, they showed genuine scientific curiosity and respect. "There's something else," Vertil said, pulling up Amy's cellular scans. "Their repair mechanisms don't just fix damage. They learn from it. Each injury, each stress, each challenge becomes data that their bodies use to become more resilient." Xalthek's scales shifted to a deep shade of blue tinged with green, a sign of profound scientific revelation. "We've discovered something revolutionary here," they announced to the room. "Human biology represents a different path of evolution than we've ever studied, not focused on specialized perfection, but on continuous adaptation and improvement." The chief medical officer turned to Lisa and Kevin. "We need to completely revise our understanding of biological advancement. Your species has shown us that there are many paths to evolutionary success. Simple doesn't mean primitive. Efficiency isn't always about speed, and what looks like weakness from one perspective might be incredible strength from another." As the alien doctors continued their excited discussions, Lisa realized they had achieved something far greater than proving human worth. They had helped expand the very definition of biological advancement in the galaxy. The main conference hall of the Zarkanian Medical Station was filled to capacity. Representatives from dozens of alien species had gathered to hear the final report on human biology. The hovering camera drones recorded everything for broadcast to medical facilities across the galaxy. Zalthek stood at the center of the speaking platform, their scales now showing a professional mix of blue and green. All 6 of their eyes moved across the audience as they prepared to speak. Lisa, Kevin, and Amy sat in the front row, representing humanity in this historic moment. Fellow medical researchers, Zalthek began, 1 week ago, I stood in this same hall and mocked human biology as primitive. Today, I stand before you to correct that grave error in judgment. The alien doctor gestured to the massive display screens behind them, showing the test results from the past week. We have witnessed something extraordinary. Human biology, which we dismissed as simple, has proven to be one of the most sophisticated systems we have ever studied. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Zalthek continued. Their endurance capabilities exceed anything in our medical records. Their ability to adapt to different environments surpasses our most advanced species. Their healing mechanism, which we called primitive, shows an efficiency we never thought possible without technological assistance. The screen showed clips from the various tests, including Amy's incredible marathon performance. Look at these results, Zalthek said. Their bodies don't just repair damage, they improve from it. They don't just adapt to environments, they thrive in them. They don't just endure, they get stronger through endurance. Vertil stepped forward with more data. We've confirmed these findings across multiple tests. Human biology represents an evolutionary path we never considered possible. Instead of developing specialized systems like our crystalline muscles, they developed incredible adaptability and endurance. The audience watched in fascination as the screens displayed detailed analyses of human biological systems. The clicking sounds of discussion filled the hall as each new discovery was presented. But perhaps our most important discovery, Zalthek continued, their scales shifting to a reverent shade of blue, is that we were wrong about what makes a species advanced. We thought biological sophistication meant having clearly superior individual systems. The humans have shown us that true advancement can mean having systems that work together in perfect harmony, constantly adapting and improving. The chief medical officer turned to face the human delegation directly. On behalf of the Zarkanian Medical Federation, I formally apologize for our earlier dismissal of human biology. We also request permission to establish a permanent human biology research department on this station, with human doctors and researchers as equal partners. Lisa stood up, feeling the eyes of every alien in the room on her. We would be honored to continue this collaboration, she said. There's still so much we can learn from each other. Zalthek's scales showed pleasure at her response. Indeed, already, several medical teams are studying how we might apply human-style adaptability to improve our own healing methods. Your species' unique biology might help us develop better treatments for many diseases. The ceremony concluded with the official signing of a medical cooperation agreement between humans and the Zarkanian Medical Federation. As Lisa signed her name on the document, she couldn't help but smile at how far they'd come in just 1 week. After the ceremony, Kevin found her looking out one of the station's large windows at the stars. Pretty amazing how things turned out, he said. From being mocked to being respected across the galaxy. It's more than that, Lisa replied. We didn't just prove ourselves to them. We helped them see that different doesn't mean inferior, that there are many paths to advancement. Amy joined them at the window, still wearing the medical sensors that had recorded her historic run. So what's next? She asked. Lisa watched as more ships arrived at the station, bringing medical researchers from other species eager to study and learn from human biology. Now, she said, we show them what else humans can do. The 3 humans stood together, looking out at the stars, knowing they had changed the galaxy's understanding of biology forever. Their supposed weaknesses had proven to be their greatest strengths, and their simple yet sophisticated biology had earned its place among the stars.